Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we have another Project Egg interview, and we are talking with Tim O'Keefe from Hawthorne, California. How you doing, Tim?
How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. So let's jump right into this thing. Tim, what is your story?
Well, you said I'm from Hawthorne, California. That's where I started uh, about 50 years ago. But I now am down the road a little bit in Torrance, California. I've been in the South Bay most of my life, but I just wanted to be clear on that so my friends who listen don't scratch their head. But I'm doing good. My a quick story on how I guess I got from there to here is I grew up like a lot of kids, South Bay. The Beach Boys, literally in Hawthorne, were about a block and a half away from me. I fell in love with surfing, got athletic, got into football, and became a college football player, which a lot of times blows people away unless they see me. They always think of me of this wiry, propeller head internet geek. Uh, and so I did the football thing, played college football, ended up uh, discovering the internet, internet marketing after a few years in different ventures, a lot of it in real estate sales right out of college. And discovered the internet, I guess around 97, 98 is when I really went whole hog. And I asked a buddy of mine who was from the same background as me, which is sales and marketing, about what he was doing on this internet thing and developing HTML websites. What's HTML and what's all this? And so I ended up, at the time, I was a recruiter, which I probably still would be. It's a great industry. But I kind of fell in love with the net and started dreaming of big marketing ideas. And so my buddy kind of showed me how to make a website, and I made a really poor, ugly website for my boss. But it was kind of cool, and it worked. And in those days, it was kind of unique and novel and special. And then I started learning from my buddy again how to make it rank in the search engines. And these are in engines called Alta Vista and InfoSeek and those kind of sites that we first learned to do searches on. And and then all of a sudden one day, after I was getting pretty good at this stuff, he calls me up and he says, "Hey man, I've recommended you take over the work that I'm doing." And I'm like, "Oh, really? That's cool." I was all excited and didn't really realize the amount of work I was committing myself to. And I said, "Why are you giving up?" And he goes, I've been hired to go take over a management of the sales force, and I got an offer I couldn't refuse, as they say. And so he gave me the deal. And so by day I was a headhunter, and by night I started really going hog wild on the internet. And it was kind of cool because it was a website that specialized in sports and mostly football and basketball. Of course, I just said my background was football, so I was very, very interested in it, and I increased their revenues just based on my marketing ability, and then also their traffic because of the SEO stuff, and it kind of blossomed from there. And I got heavily involved in the real estate side of SEO back in the beginning of 2000, and then one to always be on the cutting edge and in front of trends. I was one of the biggest bloggers in the real estate industry at one point, and then of course the bottom fell out of real estate in '07. So I made a decision to not just only specialize in real estate for my agency, but to take on other industries. And at about the same time, you'll recall, that's when social media really started blossoming, and Twitter and Facebook, and now there's 18 million others that come on board every other minute, it seems like. But that's how I got from there to here, and it allowed me over the years. This was the first year that I have not been a coach of football, and for 13 years I served a organization down the street in El Segundo, where I coached kids, my own kids, but other kids also, and mentored them, and allowed me to have the lifestyle to be able to do that thing, which is my passion.
Wow.
So I guess that's a mouthful, but that's wow. That's my life in 1 minute or whatever it was.
That's great, Tim. That's great. So, I kind of want to talk a little bit about your past more, because I think there's a lot of a lot of good things that you said. So you said you kind of started off falling in love with surfing and football, and you played in college. Well, how do you think that those passions and the things that you learned in that area rolled over to your success as an entrepreneur and internet marketer?
That's a great question, because, in fact, I just put a Facebook post out the other day. A belief that I got from coaching and it started from playing, was that your effort can expand your capability. We're born with certain talent, right? I'm about a little over 6 foot, but as my friends used to make fun of me, I'm all torso. I have short legs. Doesn't make for a super fast guy, but I worked through it. And as an athlete, I had to work on expanding my stride to increase my speed. And how else can I expand my abilities? Well, I could get in the weight room. At 6 foot, I'm going to be shorter than the guy in college that I'm playing against, who's 6'5", 300, and runs a 4.8 40, right? I'm at a disadvantage unless I'm just as strong as him and actually use my height as an advantage in leverage. And so it's the same thing in marketing. There's certain things that our competitors have that are advantages. There's a lot of people that, maybe say a local doctor in town, and they're just trying to get everybody in town, whereas they're up against one of these national chains that have an outlet in every single town, and they have big national budgets. How do you go against them? And part of the thing that you have to do is look at your advantages of actually being a local company, right? And what are the advantages there, and what are the disadvantages, and learning how to leverage those against that competitor as well as your other competitors. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, we're faced with adversities that come at us all the time on a daily basis, because we don't get a paycheck unless, we go to work, especially those of us out there that are one-man armies. And so we have to show up, and, it's hard to show up when you just found out whatever, the dog died, or, or some sort of adversity crossed your path, or you get in a tiff with the girlfriend or the wife or whatever, and your mindset's a little messed up. But you know what? As an athlete, as I said to the kids, I'd say, when your feet touch the green, there's no other world but this. Block out everything else. It doesn't matter. All you have right now is right now. And I think that's a great philosophy to take into and generalize into the rest of our lives, and especially in business, when that we're getting hammered all the time. We want to get that giant deal, that could really get us to the next level of our business. And all of a sudden we find out we lost it to whatever. And maybe it was a stupid reason. Maybe you never really figured out what the reason was, but just didn't go our way. Well, as an athlete, you realize, and as I used to teach my kids, and hopefully I think most of them to this day, 3 years later, since the last time I coached, I asked them, what's the most important play? How many plays in a game? There's 60. What's the most important play? It better be out of their mouths, this one, because the only one that matters is right now. Same thing in our business. I can't replay the fight with my girlfriend while I'm working. I'm not present to the game I'm in. And it's the same thing in throughout the day. So those are some of the ideas I think that athleticism and competing, more importantly, adds to an entrepreneur's life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think besides that, not to downplay it, I think everything you said is extremely important. You have to have that drive. You have to be competitive. You have to leave it all on the field, and you can't be bogged down by what happened in the past. But I also think that there's something to be said about teamwork. And being a coach, playing football, you know how important teamwork is. Could you maybe touch on how important building a team and being able to work with people, how important that is in entrepreneurship too?
That's a great question, and shame on me for not bringing up teamwork, because I think it's probably in the corporate and business world one of the most misunderstood words. And to me, it's a holy word. There's certain things that I look back on, and some people might think it's very silly, but I use that word holy to give reverence to certain aspects of sport. And so jump forward several years, and in between, I didn't mention this before, but I was in an outside sales company. And I would cringe when they would call the sales team a team, because it was nothing like it, a team. When one guy is trying to get into my territory and talking to people and trying to pilfer my leads, and it's just the kind of stuff that can go on in a dog eat dog kind of sales team, so to speak. So I think teamwork is very important, and it can work, but I think it's misaligned and misused too often. To me, teamwork and teamwork within a football scenario is something probably that most people don't get to really experience. Certainly in the military, those guys, and football's compared to the military all the time, which I don't think is right, because nobody's taking their lives into their hands when they play football. But the parallel is that you watch out for one another. I spent the morning calling old teammates from college to check in on another teammate who needs some support right now. Okay, that's whatever many years later. That's 30 years later. That's teamwork, right? That's connection that lasts a lifetime, and it's probably because of sweat and blood and toil. When you have 11 guys on a football field at the same time, and everyone is expecting each one to give their very best effort that they can in order to get just that one play done, is extraordinary. That 11 individuals could come together to do that kind of thing. often at the cost of pain and, and anguish and whatnot that can happen in a football scenario. Now, to try to put that into a business scenario, I think we can look at things that go on within football aspects, or certainly there's plenty leadership and these kind of things, teamwork, articles and books written that have come out of the military that have been used to translate that into the corporate and business world. But I still think it's difficult, and we have to do a little bit of realizing the realities of a business situation. Everybody's acting in their own economic interest, right? That's economics 101, and we tend to forget that. So we need to, I think, and I'd like your opinion, because I don't know another answer, but I think you have to look at each single person's on that team in a business at their own personal economic need and desires almost first before anything else, in order to establish any kind of team. Now,
right. And
parallel to that is, and I'm going into an area that I really don't have a lot of experience in a business situation of running a huge team. I do have experience when I was in the league. I was the president of the league, so I had to deal with a lot of people. But I think with dealing with anybody and dealing with the team as a coach, the closer I know their individual values and criteria for what they want to get out of the experience will give me better ideas on how I could help serve them to serve me, or to serve the outcome of the organization. Better put. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to touch on real quick what you were saying about putting the needs of your team, the individual needs, before the needs of the organization itself. There's this book that you may have read, and that if any of the listeners have not read, I would absolutely encourage you to read, called Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yep.
And in this book, Jim says that first who, then what, right? So in any organization, you first need to identify the people who you want to have on your team, and then you decide exactly what you're going to do. So to your point, you absolutely have to take into consideration the needs of the people on your team, because if you can align the needs of the people on your team with the benefits of being a part of the organization, then it's in their best interest to excel and to perform for the organization, right? So for the football team, for example, whenever each of the players plays to their best and they give their maximum effort, not only is the whole team going to be better, but they are also going to get recruited by, professional scouts. They're going to get accolades for winning a certain amount of games on the team, and, they might win the championship. And all of that helps to further their own personal interests. So to your point, I absolutely think that they have to be aligned.
Yeah, and again, we're kind of starting from two different places. Whereas, excuse me, the business situation, the economic situation, is one of adulthood, right? And why? Well, it's one of adulthood. So I'm coming in wanting a paycheck, and hopefully everything else beyond the dollars help stack my values in the right direction. Whereas I think the proposition, it gets simpler and simpler as someone is younger. And, so the young kid, I can tell you when he's 8 or 9 years old, almost every single kid there is not there of their own volition. Even they're there because their parents put them there. So that's a different motivation. The kid who's there in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade tend to be there because they want to be there, but they're being there not to get a paycheck. They're being there to fill in, a couple hours each week of their time in play. It's I think a different motivation, and so it's a motivation nonetheless. So that when you get onto what you were saying with Collins and just the whole idea of the individual person is to find out what moves them, because a dollar is a dollar. I mean, at some point, there's people that work their butts off for $40,000 a year. There's people that work even less for $150,000 or $300,000 a year, so what's the difference in their motivations and why they're doing that? Maybe the person at 40 is working part-time as a teacher and it's a vocation, and they really feel called to do that and don't really care about the money. Everybody works on different motivations. And so I think we got to find the similarities in everybody's motivations and tie them all together in order to form a team. Now, when you're doing a teamwork in football, or I imagine in any sport, you're going to be doing things that coalesce the team beyond the obvious things. And a lot of times that's by causing competition. Pete Carroll, when he was at USC, I'm sure he probably does it to this day, but he would create scenarios within his team where the whole practice was a competition. So every single drill within practice was somehow scored and had meaning compared to even different positions, so that when they went in after practice, they can look on the board and see how they scored against the rest of the team. And so through that competition, he was able to coalesce and bring his team together through competition. We could do that in the corporate world, right? We can kind of do the game thing and cause. That was my phone ringing a second ago. I'm going to turn it off so it doesn't disrupt us. We could cause maybe the words gamification within our own groups to cause a win for them, either psychologically or economically, to perform better.
Right.
But
to your point, sometimes that comes in the form of different sales goals. You have competition among salespeople, and
right.
Sometimes it could be any number of things. But like you said, it's important to find what makes each person tick and figure out exactly what they need to be motivated and give them that in large quantities so they can be as motivated as possible. So, I'd like to take this moment to jump a little bit more into your history. So you kind of started off in the football scene, in the athletic scene, and you said once you graduated, you kind of took a step more into the internet marketing and real estate area. Could you maybe give some insight on how you got into that field of internet marketing and where the real estate kind of plays a part in that?
Well, the interest in real estate came because I used to be a realtor. Right out of college, I jumped into real estate sales, and then jumped maybe, I don't know, a decade later or less after a divorce and uh, whatnot. I had struggled with different things, and then ended up inside of the recruiting business, which is where I first started doing internet marketing and building sites. I then jumped into had the opportunity to take over the sports site, so I was a webmaster slash marketer for them. It was basically do whatever I needed to do to help them make more money. So I did everything. And then somewhere along the line, I'm sitting down for lunch with my ex real estate partner, and he presents me with an idea to build let's build a flat fee service real estate site, which is kind of putting the commission model of real estate, kind of smashing it, and just for a fee you can sell a house, which has been tried now since then over and over again, and with different levels of success. But we were one of the first sites out to actually offer that. At one time, I don't know, I think we got 103,000 visits a month before we started getting a lot of competition and nefarious acts against our site. If and I'll leave it at that. But I think we got a little bit hammered by the competition on different dirty aspects. But it was a great lesson, and that's how I got into the real estate as a niche. And I started going to a mastermind of realtors, and I was invited forever. I had a forever invite as a vendor to be at their quarterly event. This is about the year 2000, 2001, to talk about marketing and add to whatever it was they were talking about at the time. And so I started getting business from there, and it just blossomed.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So, um, now you're we talked a little bit about your past and kind of how you got to where you are, but could you give a little bit of insight on exactly what you're doing today and how how it kind of came together to what you're doing today?
Well, yeah. One of the things that I guess I've been pretty good at and pretty bad at, depending on the perspective, maybe. But one of the things that over the years that I have been reluctant to do is to go full speed into any platform that's on the net. As an example, I was probably, and this is still back in the real estate, specific days. I was probably the first, as I said, I was one of the first guys in blogging, and I was probably one of the first guys on WordPress, as an example. And as the industry, real estate is an interesting industry that a lot of the people are first to try anything because it's such a competitive industry. So it's pretty dynamic. I mean, there's always something new, some new idea that's put out there. And so it really kind of forces one to learn to say no, or to just take it with a grain of salt. And all of a sudden, the industry realized that, oh, well, SEO, right, in the beginning. Well, first you got to have a website. And so there was buzz around that. And then SEO, what's this thing that makes you get in the engine? SEO. So it was real easy for me because I was positioned and had the word SEO attached to my business, oh, call this guy. And it was really a great place to be in. And then blogging came along and WordPress. And a lot of rumor was that, oh, well, just get on WordPress and you'll be optimized. You don't need an SEO guy. Right. And that's one of the funny things that I talk about all the time. There's always in SEO and technical, there's always a half truth and there's always a truth. It seems like that's pushed. And so, yeah, you're kind of optimized, but that's not all of it. And so a lot of the guys that were pushing it within the industry, I realized I'm just going to stay away from that. I didn't swallow the Kool-Aid, as it were. But there was a large group within the real estate industry that was what was called the ReNet. They were WordPress enthusiasts, and I just kind of stayed away from that. As a guy who really loves team, I really wasn't willing to jump on that team, and I've been reluctant over the years to jump into just anything because it's the flavor of the day. Not that WordPress is or was the flavor of the day. It's for the reasons it was the flavor of the day. And so with technology, it comes and goes. I mean, stuff today that's amazing in technology will not be a big deal tomorrow. Watching as an example, I just read today that San Francisco is starting out with, they called it in the headline, headless drivers in San Francisco for Uber. Well, that's a huge deal when you first see that. But you know what? Our kids won't think so. In fact, we won't think so either in probably another few years. So technology moves so fast that we have to not take it, I guess, with a grain of sand, but to realize how's it fit, and is it even useful? Is it relevant? Is it relevant right now? How can I use this? You mentioned earlier with your Facebook advertising that you do. It makes a lot of sense for a company to do that. It really does, more so than ever. Maybe 4 years ago, I don't think I would have said that. 3 years ago, I don't know that I would have said that. Today, you better be, right? You better be advertising on Facebook. So it all fits. Now, what am I doing today that's let's say different than 3 years ago with SEO? What I'm doing is I'm creating a content funnel and doing their SEO, allowing clients to do social media much easier than what they're doing, and doing it in a way that's comprehensive and in line and in sync with what they're doing at home base, which usually is their website. And all the while making it so that it helps their SEO. So they're able to do social media and SEO when in fact most companies are probably doing all of the above poorly. So
right.
That's a little kind of tease on what we're doing differently today.
And that's incredible. So I really like how, despite the fact that there have been all of these different things that you could have jumped into, and that you may have dabbled in a little bit, that you've really stuck true to the SEO, and you've been doing that for a number of years, and you've kind of seen the rise of it, and how it has remained important as well. And so, I really do think that there is something to be said about sticking with something long enough until you're an expert at it, until you master it. So we talked a little bit about your past. We talked about what you're doing now. How you're an SEO expert. and how you're kind of coming at it from a creative, game changing type deal. What does the future hold for Tim? Okay, what do you think is the biggest thing that you are going to accomplish, or that you have to accomplish in your lifetime?
That's a good question. I'm working on a couple projects right now, and the one that's getting in the middle of it that is a big question mark. And I talked to a friend of mine to counsel me on it, and I'm in the middle of doing a lot of calling of my old friends to get counseling. Is I'm thinking about coaching again, and my business when I'm coaching looks very different. It's kind of looks like it does right now, uh, and it has for the last 10 or 13 years. But if I don't coach again, then my business looks different. I've got to scale way up and and do some things that will allow it to be more robust than it is right now. It serves me very well as a lifestyle business. I work from home, uh, and and so the future, it really depends on my choices if I get back into coaching. Another project that I have that has very much to do with my coaching is I podcast also, not only on SEO stuff and interesting people like you do, but I also am doing an interesting project on football thought leaders. And for instance, I now that the season is kind of winding down, I have a number of my coaching friends that have promised me some time, and I definitely want to talk to them because they're actually in the business of coaching. But one of the things that I'm doing very uniquely is I have brought in, and it's one of the things that I didn't tell you yet. That's a big interest of mine is the field of, well, I guess I did. I mentioned neuromarketing. I think I did, and where you get that word from really is from NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and hypnosis, which a lot of people think are kind of woo woo kind of things, but it's I can tell you that Pete Carroll uses a sports psychologist on staff of Seattle Seahawks. I know a lot of guys do, and so what I'm doing in my little project is I'm bringing people in that really aren't necessarily specialists in sports, but they are specialists in making people's minds work more effective. And then I ask them in a context that's different than their normal wheelhouse, but it still works in that context. So I'm interviewing them on various aspects of, let's just call it sports psychology. Now, the interesting thing with that is any of these things in my interviews translates to business. And when I talk to people, I'll say, "Hey, check out my podcast." It's especially the sport one on, when I talk to Jonathan Outfeld or Mark Ryan or Dave Barron, et cetera, because they talked about this, and this, and boy, talk about helping out your employees or helping out a client or whatever. They give that how to do that. It's just in a little bit of a different context, having to do with sports. So what I'll do with that is my goal is to get enough material from these kind of guys in the actual inside the context of football and outside the context of football. And we're about to start transcribing these podcasts, and we'll continue to. And then we'll end up editing. I'll hand them back to the interviewee, editing it, and then getting it ready for a book. And then seeing what we could do from there to take it and spread the gospel, as it were, into different realms within sports and business. What that gospel is my view on coaching. And it's just using a lot of different people to help me build it because they were mentors of mine in various ways. So that's a big part of the goal for Tim, for me, as well as with the podcasts I'm doing right now on, and they're not interviews, they're just me talking about various SEO aspects or social media aspects. I'll be doing the same thing there. I'll be transcribing them and then seeing how I can repurpose those to use as ways to build more credibility. And as they say, the best business card's a book, right? So you want instant credibility, hand a book to somebody, get published. So those are, I don't know if those are could be called super long-term goals, but they're definitely, they're not happening right now, but they will soon.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I do think that those are awesome goals. By the way, I very much look forward to reading those books and to listening to your podcast from now on. I still kind of want to get to that one big thing for you, Tim. So I guess I want to rephrase my question to, what is your purpose?
That's a great question. Great question also for, I was talking about NLP a second ago. It's you're getting into that kind of stuff when they start asking about values, and it's a great question when you're wanting to get to know your team, right? I mean, it might be difficult when I'm dealing with a 9-year-old to ask them, "What is your purpose?" But you can ask them, you could ask them these kind of questions and where you're going with me. My purpose, and this is why I'm being pulled to coach again. Is my purpose is to affect people in ways that can help them get through what I see as more and more complicated times. I want, and I try to, when I'm on Facebook or on social media, I try to, talk about things and understandings, and I definitely have my point of view, but I also am trying to get people to understand things maybe in new ways, and there's no other better way that I know that I can affect a giant group of people than as a coach, and is why I'm thinking of doing this again and seriously considering it, and why I'm, as a marketer, I'm not your nonstop 24/7 promoter. I'm trying to help people, and you kind of talked about that before we got on. Let's make, how can we make it better for people to and to understand so that they can not, my view anyway, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but my view anyway is I don't want somebody to get hooked on my crack. That's what a lot of today's marketers are doing. We're going to give you just enough. Now you're going to get hooked on the personality, on the cult of personality, the whole thing, and you're going to now have to, spend money over and over and over again, as opposed to when I work with clients, I'm trying to help them, even in my SEO clients. If I my worst scenario is when I'm not dialoguing with a client, where because I want my client. I had a conversation yesterday with a doctor, and he said, "Should I start this blog? I have this URL. Should I start it?" And I went through 20 minutes of explaining to him some other activities that I'd like him, if he's going to do stuff on his own, I'd like to see him do that would help augment and expand the results of what I'm doing already. And so I don't mind trying to teach him, some tricks of the trade to to get better, because when he gets and he won't, he is so tied into me because every time we talk, he's learning something. And so I think uh, that, and for me, that's gratifying. I think the world gets better that way, instead of just us extrapolating money and then going on to the next guy to extrapolate money from. And so when I could get people to learn how to help themselves, not necessarily to get rid of me, but to augment, to add to what it is that I'm doing for them to make it even better, that I get off on that. So my purpose is really I am a coach, whether it be coaching with a hat and a whistle, or as we're doing right now, I'm trying to get through to people listening that you can do better. Maybe you can think a little bit different after you and I get off the phone today. Maybe the listeners will think just a little differently than chasing, one of the things, and we've all done it, chasing shiny objects from the marketers that are out there, and actually build a business plan, a strategy, tactics that'll get us to where we want to go. And hopefully, after today, we've had a little bit to do with that.
Absolutely. And what we were talking about before is how anything that we can do to provide value to people and to help anybody is a good reason to do this. And so I really am glad that you brought up that point. And I think for a lot of people who might just be starting out and money's a big thing, you're trying to achieve financial independence and financial freedom, one of the easiest ways to do that is to help a lot of people, right? If you want to make $1 million, help 1 million people and get them to pay you $1. That is a surefire way to do it. You can absolutely get that done. You just have to help 1 million people, right? So the more you help,
honestly,
the more you get.
I don't want to. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I kind of said that. That's when I was recruiting. I mean, it's appalling what I was paid compared to now. I mean, I would have done it for free for my boss when I was a headhunter. Just let me make your website, man. Pay me whatever. Okay, I'll pay you. I think he was paying me $75 a month for SEO. This is, whatever, 1990 something. And I would do it. I would have done it for free. And I was helping him, and now I have an example. So go do that a few times. Go do that a few times and help people and give value to them based on what it is that what your expertise is. And when they're better off for it, they're going to spread the word. And then you have every right to ask them for something formal or something more. The other thing that I'd like to add is go take somebody who's smarter than you that you want to be like, and go take them to lunch and just pick their brain. And more often than not, you'll get so much information out of that, more than you'll get from most courses, more than you'll get from most internet anything, how-tos, because you're getting somebody's actual values and beliefs, and it's going to pour out on you. And that was the great thing that I got when I coached. One of the great things that I had access to. I had access to college coaches. I remember a time after a USC game, I was talking to a friend of mine who was one of the coaches, and I said something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he reacted to it as if I never said it. It was so out of his wheel. It was a negative thing. And it was so out of his wheelbox. He changed me back to a more positive thinking trajectory than I was on at the time. And he didn't tell me. It wasn't a lesson. It was his actions. And I've seen that and experienced it over and over and over again. And what is coaching but giving of your time and value? And so I can't really point to like a bunch of deals that I got in business from my coaching, but I'll tell you something I did get. I got lessons from individuals that were great at business. I've had dads that had kids on my team that are brilliant business people that I had access to that in the real world, they wouldn't give me the time of day because they're too busy. But because I'm helping their kid, I was able to talk to them, about different aspects of business and management or whatever. I've met great coaches. What is a coach but a manager, especially if they're running a giant NCAA college football team. They're just running a different kind of business. And nobody is more organized than a professional coach. I would put them up against any of the great business people. You get a professional head coach, and it's amazing that how anal they are about every single detail. So just my 2 cents on that.
Absolutely. And, Tim, I do want to thank you for all the time that you've spent doing this interview with me today. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, but I do have one more question for you. And then we do have a special surprise for everybody that is listening. But my last question is there anything about yourself that is an important part of who you are that I did not ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
I think you nailed a lot. I guess I'm a family man, and I'm extremely transparent. So if you follow me on Facebook, you probably can get an idea that you know me. But what's funny is even though I'm pretty transparent in some ways, I don't talk too much about my family because I don't think it's anybody's business. And so my point is that you can really build a persona that gives people enough of you, which I think is important in business today, where they know enough about you, but without telling every secret there is, like a lot of people do in social media, and why a lot of people run away from social media. They don't want to do it because they think, oh, I gotta, tell every detail and secret, and, all this. No, you really don't. But you just need to be, pick your transparencies and how deep it'll go, and usually that's enough. And so, yeah, and so the part that I didn't share is I'm definitely, my family is everything to me.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I do think that speaks a lot about your character too. Tim, I would like to again thank you for jumping on this interview today. It has been fantastic, and I'm really glad that you took the time to do this.
Thanks a lot, Ben, and you had some very great questions, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So to everybody listening, this has been another Project Egg interview. Today we've been talking with Tim O'Keefe from Hawthorne, California. Take care now.